1-0.
I feel the liftoff. The clock has started.
Roger.
Loud and clear, Gus.
Roger, Aurora 7. Stand by for your time hack.
Roger. A little bit of shaking. Scott, will your trip be a duplicate of John Glenn's 3-orbital mission?
In many ways, Chuck, it will be 3 orbits, but the flight plan differs some, and we have some new equipment on board and some new fixes that we hope will take care of some of the trouble that John had. Roughly the same profile.
One of your colleagues, Deke Slayton, had been scheduled for this mission, but a slight heart flutter caused a change in plans. What was your reaction to being named to take Deke's place?
Well, I think my reaction was much the same as everyone else's. It was mainly disappointment. Deke felt this most acutely, I'm sure. It was decreed that because of my participation in John's flight as backup, that I was the best currently qualified to go, and so I was asked to take the flight. I expected to meet this assignment with a great deal of pleasure, and which I did, but it was tinged somewhat by the disappointment I know that Deke felt.
Is there any doubt in your mind, Scott, that Deke was able to make the flight?
No, there's no question in my mind at all.
You served as backup pilot on the John Glenn mission. Are you following John's program and preparing yourself for your own 3-orbital flight?
Well, it really isn't John's program. It's a program that Al and Gus and John both all have followed. It's a program that we have sort of devised as a team. Each person has a few idiosyncrasies in his way of training, but roughly the same.
Scott, how do you prepare your wife and children for your flight? Do you discuss your mission fully with them? Do you explain the potential dangers, all the safety factors that are built in, and just what the mission is all about, why you're going to do it?
Well, yes, we do that, but it isn't necessary to discuss this specifically with them. We as a group are involved in Mercury, and they learn from the newspapers and from the TV and in our discussions at home. They know nearly as much about it as I do. It's not necessary to point out the fact that there are many backups available, and it's not necessary to point out that there are some dangers involved, but it's a continuous process.
How do you and your backup astronaut, Wally Schirra, prepare for launch day? Do you have specific guidelines or responsibilities for each other?
Yes. It's our joint responsibility to prepare the team of 2 for the flight. Our ways will be roughly parallel up until about a week before launch. We do everything together. We make joint decisions. His input into the flight plan and the conduct of the whole flight is as important as mine. This is our flight, in other words. Toward the end of the preparation, our ways part some, because he has to devote a little more time to his function as the blockhouse communicator. He has to take some of the testing procedures on his back, because I'm just not available at that time. But the responsibilities up until then are implicit in our relationship. I think they're very well understood, and it's definitely a team effort throughout.
This is probably one of those difficult questions to answer, but I'm sure most people wonder about it. When did you first start your interest in flying? When did you decide you wanted to become a pilot? And why, since there are still so many hot planes around, did you volunteer to be an astronaut, to go into space?
Well, answer to number 1, I think I first thought about flying for the Navy when I was in high school. And number 2, the opportunity that this program provides to get first-hand knowledge of such a great unknown is just something I couldn't turn down.
This next question is not asked in a necessarily light vein. There's been considerable speculation recently that it might be wise to have women astronauts in our man in space program. How do you, as a veteran test pilot and as a male, feel about this proposal?
I think that there definitely is a need for women astronauts someday. That time is not yet.
Why is that? Is it strictly because of physical problems, that the girls wouldn't have the ability to stand up under G-stresses and weightlessness, or is it something more than that?
Well, there will be some problems involved with women astronauts. I think that we're having enough trouble trying to fly male astronauts at the time that at this moment it would be unwise to include women. There will definitely be a need for this in the future.
Do you expect or hope to make future flights or to fly in the Gemini program and perhaps even go to the moon? Or do you think that your age will rule you out when those programs come around?
Well, that depends, of course, on when these programs come around. I believe also you're only as old as you act, and I hope to be included in future programs.
Carpenter would make new scientific observations from space for the benefit of all mankind. He would use Aurora 7 as a platform for science, for star observations, measurements of star brightness in space, using a specially designed photometer, measurements of the relative brightness of zodiacal light and other dim night phenomena, using a special instrument with crossed Polaroid filters. This instrument also permits direct viewing of the sun's disk and measurements of the polarization of the sun's corona, measurements of light attenuation through the atmosphere, and more than a dozen other astronomical and physiological experiments, experiments that cannot be performed on Earth. Carpenter would also make observations and photographs of the booster falling away to investigate the visual limitations associated with a receding object in space. Color perception by releasing a multicolored balloon, then observing and photographing the balloon to determine its color reflectivity and aerodynamic behavior, both of which have a bearing on visual aspects of future rendezvous missions in space. Photographs of the Earth's horizon to be taken through special filters for scientific study by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory. Photographs of cloud masses over the Earth for study by Weather Bureau scientists. A special experiment carried on board the Aurora 7 would investigate the behavior of fluids under zero-G conditions. Throughout the flight, Carpenter was scheduled to conduct spacecraft maneuvers using the manual control system.
The luminous particles that Glenn saw, we're going to make an attempt this time to get better photographic evidence. We don't expect to be able to get them exactly, but we've used, for example, different focal length lenses, different camera fields, and different films to try to capture these particles on emulsion of some kind. We are going to use a balloon which will be released from the small end, the tail end of the capsule as it's going around on the end of a long string, and we'll have a device that will tell us how much tension there is in the string. From knowing the size of the balloon, we'll be able to determine how much drag there is up there. We know, for example, that there are not very many molecules up there, but there are some. We want to find out just how many there are per cubic inch. Scotty will actually be moving the spacecraft out of its normal attitude, out of its normal flight angle, a great deal more than John did. He has more flexibility, more leeway in his flight plan. We will try to observe flares from the ground that will be fired up from Woomera, Australia this time. We had some flares ready for John's flight, but unfortunately, in the middle of the Indian Ocean, the weather wasn't very good, so he didn't get a chance to see them. So we've moved the location for the flares into the middle of the Australian desert in the hope we get better visibility.
The suit is air-conditioned, both at this time through the facilities that are being tested there, and also throughout his ride over to the pad and up into the capsule. Got some final checks of the straps on the outside, and prepared to leave Hangar S, where all this took place, a couple of miles from Launch Pad 14. This is the scene as he left Hangar S, followed by doctors and technicians. He's following here in the footsteps of some who preceded him on this little walk out to the transfer van that will take him to Pad 14. 3 others have taken this walk, only 3 in history. Alan Shepard and Virgil Grissom, and then last February 20th, John Glenn. Carpenter hopes that he does not take the walk more than once. He hopes he gets off this morning as planned. John Glenn made this walk twice, and for 5 hours and 20 minutes on January 20th, sat atop that steaming rocket, waiting to blast off, only to have weather cause a cancellation, and he had to leave the rocket. And here's Scott Carpenter, as earlier this morning, a couple of hours ago, he left the transfer van at Pad 14, greeted B.G. McNabb, who's the head of the Atlas program. The Atlas is the booster, you know, here. McNabb wished him good luck from all those on Pad 14, and Carpenter did not answer, just grinned. Carpenter has smiled frequently as he's taken these walks and been seen by the handful of people at Hangar S, 100 or so at the pad, but he hasn't seemed as jaunty as did Glenn, Grissom, and Shepard. He seemed a little bit more serious. There haven't been any waves or anything of that kind for the camera. That elevator rises some 11 stories, some 68 feet, to the point where the capsule and the booster are joined. The booster itself 65 feet high, the capsule 9 feet high, sitting atop it. The capsule is enclosed in its special white room, as it's called, green on the outside, white on the inside for sanitary purposes. Carpenter arrives at this enclosed room in which is his capsule. The hospital-like atmosphere here is to prevent any dust or lint or bits of hair or anything from getting into the capsule and fouling the very delicate mechanism there, creating problems for Scott Carpenter and for the astronaut. He mounts the 3 steps that lead up to the small hatch into which he must crawl to get into the tight confines of this capsule. The capsule is the craft which takes him around the world. It is, as we've said, just 9 feet high, a few inches more than that, between 9.5 feet high, just 6 feet across. He lies in it on his back, just 3 feet from the heat shield, which will protect him from the 3,000 degrees of heat of reentry when his capsule, in effect, becomes a meteor returning to Earth. He lies on his back with his feet in a slightly inclined position, something like a contour chair. The chair in which he sits is exactly the same sort of thing as a contour chair, and it is modeled to him too.
The astronaut is ready. Downrange and around the world, the recovery forces are on station. 20 ships, 110 aircraft, 13,000 Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps personnel, all standing by for a lone American in a silver spacesuit. From the beaches near Cape Canaveral, across America, and throughout the nations of the Earth, millions watched and listened to the drama on Launch Complex 14.
All mile mark. We will pick up the count at T-minus 11 minutes. Mark, T-minus 11 minutes and counting.
In a few minutes, the great Atlas booster with its 360,000 pounds of thrust will lift the spacecraft up and out of the Earth's atmosphere and, guided by a miracle of space-age electronics, place it in the sky, leading to orbital flight. Precision radar will note every motion of the Atlas at every moment during the powered portion of the flight. The radar information will flow instantaneously into high-speed computers which have been pre-programmed with the correct trajectory data. The computer compares the actual data from the ascending Atlas with the pre-programmed flight plan and instantly and automatically transmits signals which gimbal the booster engines to steer the Atlas along the desired flight path.
T-minus 5 minutes. Mark, T-minus 5 minutes and counting. Your attention, please. All personnel, please clear the test stand area to the roadblock.
While the actual launch is controlled from a windowless concrete blockhouse near the launch pad, the Mercury Control Center, farther away, is the nerve center from which all elements of the mission are managed.
GE guidance, go. Mercury capsule, go. AMR telemetry,
T-minus 3 minutes.
Metering quality, go.
Stoney, switch to RF and conduct UHF check with CO. TM blockhouse, camera and tape recorder on. All Mercury stations, T-minus 2 and counting. Status check, missile power.
Go.
RF systems,
Go.
propulsion,
Go.
AMR telemetry,
Go.
telemetering quality,
Go. Tell me how we are.
Mercury capsule.
Go. T-minus 60 seconds.
Test conductor, Mercury is go.
TM, yours at 2 minutes. Minus 45.
Get a good final RNZ.
Minus 40. 40 seconds. Status check. Pressurization, go. Blocks tanking, go. Water systems, go. Range operations, go. You're clear to launch. Mercury cap, go. All pre-start lights are correct. The range-ready light is on. 26. Eject Mercury umbilical.
Retract light.
Umbilical is clear. All evacuate.
Position light is out.
Mercury is go. All report to FAD. All evacuate light on. T-minus 18 seconds and counting. Engine start.
15.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 3, 2, 1, 0.
I feel the liftoff. The clock has started. Roger. Loud and clear, Gus. Roger, Aurora 7. Stand by for your time hack. Roger. A little bit of shaking. 3, 2, 1, mark.
Roger, the backup clock has started.
Roger, Aurora 7.
Clear blue sky. 32 seconds, 9,000. Fuel and oxygen steady. Cabin pressure 51 and dropping. A little rough for max Q. 1 minute.
Roger, you're looking good from here, Scott.
25 amps and the power is good.
Roger, you're looking good.
Mark, 1 minute. Cabin pressure is on schedule. Fuel and oxygen are steady 24 amps. All the power is good.
Roger, pitch is 56. You look real good.
Roger, my pitch looks good. Moving down a little bit now. Feel the pitch program starting over.
Roger.
Sky is getting quite black at 1:30. Elapsed. Fuel and oxygen is steady. Cabin pressure is leveling off at 6.2. 22 amps and the power is still good. A 1 CPS sway in yaw.
Roger, understand. Pitch is 37. You look real good. Stand by for staging.
Roger, there's Pico on top.
Roger, understand, Pico.
Roger, I felt staging. Do you confirm?
We confirm staging.
Do you confirm staging?
Aurora 7, we confirm staging.
Mercury Control. The United States launched its second manned orbital spaceflight with astronaut M. Scott Carpenter at the controls at 0745 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here today. purpose of the flight is to continue the investigation of man's capabilities in space, leading toward manned flight to the moon and return. This is Mercury Control.
10 seconds to go.
Okay. There is eco deposit grades fired. I am weightless and starting to fly low our turnaround. Stamp is good.
Roger, you look good down here.
Periscope is out.
And Aurora 7, we have a go with better than 7 orbit capability.
Roger. Sweet words.
Roger.
Aurora 7 is in orbit. The men in the blockhouse have done their job, and the Atlas booster has done its job. Now, it's up to Mercury Control and the tracking network, the spacecraft, and the astronaut. 99 miles high over the Atlantic, traveling at more than 17,000 miles an hour, Scott Carpenter goes to work.
I have the moon in the center of the window, and the booster off to the right slightly.
One of his first jobs was observing and photographing the burned-out Atlas as it trailed him into orbit. At this time, he discovered that by means of his attitude control system, he could successfully track and orient his spacecraft in relation to the trailing booster. This information will be useful in planning future orbital rendezvous missions. Approaching Africa, radio contact is made with the Mercury tracking station at Kano, Nigeria.
At 29:43, the first time I was able to get horizon pictures with MIT film, set at f8 and 1/25. A picture to the south into the sun, directly down my flight path is number 2.
As the Aurora 7 sped across Africa into the sunset, the astronaut began his continuing study of the space environment. The haze layer noted on the prior flight of Freedom 7 was now measured for light wave frequency, breadth, and width. Star observations were made for occlusion and intensity. Venus was clearly observed low on the horizon. Experiments were conducted on drifting flight, as well as the effects of spacecraft control by body movement and orientation with the darkened Earth. Body movement and proprioceptive tests were conducted during prolonged weightlessness. Observations were periodically made of the liquid behavior experiment. These observations confirmed suspected surface tension effects under the weightless condition. And always the endless task of communication with the Mercury tracking station. Mouchet and Woomera, Australia.
Hello, Mouchet, Capcom, Aurora 7, loud and clear. How me?
See you loud and clear also. What's your status?
Canton Island in the dark Pacific. Out of the night and into a sunrise. And at sunrise, the first of the space particles.
I have the fireflies. I have the particles. I was facing away from the sun at sunrise, and I did not see the particles. Just after yawing about 180 degrees, I was able to pick up at this standby. I think I see more. There was one, random motions. Some even appeared to be going ahead. There is one outside, almost like a light snowflake particle caught in an eddy. They are not glowing with their own light at this time. And mark coastal passage.
Say again?
Mark coastal passage coming over the Baja.
How does it look?
Half covered with clouds, and the other half is dry. Will you pass on this message for me, Gordo, to all the troops at Guaymas? Hola, amigos. Felicitaciones a México y especialmente a mis amigos de Guaymas. Desde el espacio exterior su país está cubierto con nubes and es also se me muy bello. Aquí el tiempo está muy bueno. Buena suerte desde Aurora 7.
Roger. Muchas gracias, amigo.
Okay.
It takes Aurora 7 just 8 minutes to cross America from the Pacific to the Atlantic. And over the homeland, repeat the endless checks on blood pressure, suit temperature, control mode, fuel consumption, time. And now, approaching Bermuda, the balloon experiment.
Aurora 7 to the balloon inflate.
The balloon is partially inflated. I would say we have about a 1 cycle per minute oscillation. It's both in pitch and yaw.
After release, tensiometer measurements and observations against the blackness of space. Of the 4 colors, only orange and silver seemed clearly visible. Then, visibility studies and studies of depth perception in space. Experiments with food consumption and handling. Scott Carpenter swinging in a long arc across Africa.
Yes, I have. However, the food has crumbled badly, and I hate to open the package anymore for fear of getting crumbs all over the capsule. I can verify that eating bite-sized food as we've packaged for this flight is no problem at all. Even the crumbly foods are eaten with no problem. Go ahead, Indian Capcom. That's very good. I guarantee I'm breathing.
On the 3rd orbit, Aurora 7 approaches the California coast and the critical retrofire maneuver. Scott Carpenter identified the mysterious particles as frost, dislodged from the exterior of the spacecraft. But now, the fuel supply is very short.
Gyros are off.
Right, you'll have to use attitude bypass, man, and manual override.
Roger.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Okay, fire 1, fire 2, and fire 3. I had to punch off manually.
Aurora 7 faces one more obstacle as it speeds across the United States. As the spacecraft encounters the atmosphere, its speed and energy are translated into heat through friction. 3,600 degree temperatures 3 feet from the astronaut's back. An ablative heat shield dissipates the heat, but the enormous temperatures create a layer of ionized air around the spacecraft, which blocks communications.
Roger. Yes, but I can't get anything out of it.
In Mercury control, every second seems an hour as the communications blackout begins. But Scott Carpenter continued to record his observations on a tape recorder in the spacecraft.
My fuel, I hope, holds out. There is 1G. Getting a few streamers of smoke. Out behind, there's some green flashes out there. Reentry is going pretty well. Oxdamp seems to be keeping oscillations pretty good. We're at 1.5 Gs now. There was a flaming piece coming off. Almost looked like it came off the tower. Oh, I hope not. Okay, we're reading 3 Gs. I think we'll have to let the reentry damping check go this time. Reading now 4 4Gs. The reentry seems to be going okay. And it was just in time. Main deploy. Fuse switches on now. 21 indicated. Snorkel override. Now, emergency flow rate on. Emergency main fuse switch at 15. Landing by for the main chute at 10. Cabin pressure, cabin altimeter, agree on altitude. Should be 13,000 now. Mark 10. I see the main is out and reefed, and it looks good to me. The main chute is out.
Aurora 7, Cape Capcom, over. Aurora 7, Cape Capcom, over.
Cape, do you read yet?
Aurora 7, Cape Capcom, over. Aurora 7, Cape Capcom, over.
Aurora Capcom, he's pretty far downrange.
Aurora 7, Cape Capcom, over.
Trajectory data flowing through the high-speed computers at the Goddard Space Flight Center provide a landing point prediction. Aurora 7 will land some 250 miles farther downrange than anticipated. Recovery forces order flank speed toward the predicted landing area. Scramble all search and rescue aircraft aloft. Alert pararescue personnel and all medical and emergency teams.
Aurora 7, Cape Capcom, over. Aurora 7, Cape Capcom, over.
In the recovery room at Cape Canaveral, the predicted landing point is charted, checked, and rechecked. Predicted time to recovery, 1 hour. The long wait begins.
Our data at this time indicates that it is distinctly possible that the Aurora 7 spacecraft may land considerably longer downrange than it was planned. Our present estimate of his landing point may go as far as 200 miles downrange. For that reason, we feel that his ionization period now is over, that he has exceeded the range of our transmission equipment here at Cape Canaveral. We are diverting aircraft into the area, both for the purpose of reestablishing communications and effecting a rescue operation. This is Mercury Control.
Then, contact with the Aurora 7.
A U.S. Navy P-2V aircraft in the landing area has received an electronic contact from a device called a Sarah beacon. We do not have any further details at this time except that he has made the contact and has taken a bearing on the source of that signal. He is now diverting his aircraft into that immediate area. This is Mercury Control.
Flight network. Go ahead. Source through Antigua reports they see life raft with Carpenter inside alongside the capsule.
This is Mercury Control. We have just received a report through our Recovery Operations Branch that an aircraft in the landing area has sighted the spacecraft and has sighted a life raft with a gentleman by the name of Carpenter riding in it. This now explains why our communications have not been too effective. Astronaut M. Scott Carpenter has been sighted in his life raft alongside of his spacecraft in the landing zone. This is Mercury Control standing by.
I had uninterrupted time. When I say uninterrupted time, most everybody else who had gotten back was subjected immediately to pressing questions and a large debriefing team, and they don't have much time, as much as I did, for introspection and reflection on the events of the past 5 hours. I treasured that. The only living critter I had around for a long time was a gold-colored fish that had taken up residence under my life raft in the shade of the life raft, and I remember contemplating the marvelous experience and enjoying time to to reflect on it.
Well, we've just received the happy word here aboard the USS Intrepid that one of the ship's own jet helicopters, HSS-2s that is, a twin jet which has been speeding to the scene of impact, has just effected rescue of astronaut Scott Carpenter and is now proceeding toward the Intrepid. Commander Wonder Jim and his HSS-2 are now heading toward the Intrepid with Scott Carpenter aboard. This is Joe Campbell aboard the very, very happy USS Intrepid.
Mercury Control. We have just been advised by our recovery operations that a helicopter from the USS Intrepid has in fact picked up U.S. astronaut Scott Carpenter and reports that his condition is good. I repeat, we have a report that the helicopter from the USS Intrepid has picked up astronaut Scott Carpenter and reports that his condition is good. This is Mercury Control. This is Mercury Control. We have just been advised by our recovery operations that a helicopter from the USS Intrepid has in fact picked up U.S. astronaut Scott Carpenter and reports that his condition is good.
The flight of Aurora 7 has ended, but the scientific evaluation has only begun. After a short rest and a post-flight physical examination aboard the Intrepid, astronaut Carpenter is flown to Grand Turk Island for a thorough debriefing. Meanwhile, the destroyer Pierce fishes Aurora 7 from the sea for return to Cape Canaveral, where it too will be subjected to a complete post-flight examination. Debriefing at Grand Turk requires 2 days, during which Aurora 7's pilot records his observations and suggestions and answers hundreds of questions from Mercury scientists and engineers. This information will be important in planning increasingly complex flights for the future. Experience from each flight is pyramided, building America's road into space scientifically, step by step.
There were 3 failures that were all additive. First of all, the retro rockets were slightly under thrust. That may be a minimal influence on the overshoot. They were late because of an attitude instrument failure, which really had not been discovered. There was no yaw check in the flight plan. Maybe there should have been, but we didn't expect that. And remember, we're learning. Anyway, the yaw indicator was bad. I think all the attitude instruments were faulty, but intermittently. So when it came time for retrofire, I had to cage those gyros and fly manually out the window attitudes that I thought were right. Pitch is no problem, that you can see that easily on the horizon. Roll doesn't enter into it, but yaw is very difficult to see without spending a lot of time tracking your progress. And I didn't do that. I was also probably would have done that had I not been so fascinated by the discovery that John Glenn's were not fireflies, but pieces of frost. That fascinated me. Major discovery, I thought, in any event. All of these things added to an overshoot.
I understand the report came from Hawaii that it was a tired and confused astronaut. If my opinion is worth anything to you, this is not true. I will admit to being preoccupied. I would like to apologize for the concern I caused the people who watched the flight, for the concern in the control center. Had I known how concerned you were, I would have been concerned. But I was not. The problem was in communications.
My status was good throughout, and in many respects this was as easy as a bus ride.
All the sciences, from medicine to meteorology, from astronomy to astrophysics, were the beneficiaries of the flight of Aurora 7. Man has gone to work in space for the advancement of knowledge and the cause of freedom. Aurora 7 was a triumph of science and human courage, and the nation is grateful.
Mercury-Atlas number 7, Navy Lieutenant Commander Scott Carpenter, in spacecraft Aurora 7, accomplished 3 orbits for a total flight time of 4 hours, 53 minutes. The test verified the observations and results of the MA-6 flight and contributed valuable space science information. A combination of delayed retrofire and spacecraft alignment resulted in a landing 250 miles beyond the planned recovery area. Otherwise, the flight was completely successful. So successful, in fact, that a re-evaluation of the Mercury mission was made. This re-evaluation confirmed the previous decision to extend the number of orbits for future flights beyond the 3 originally planned.